Excellent. Well, thank you all for being here for the Finance and Administration Committee for May 1st, 2023. We'll first get started with the roll call.
Jessica Andrade. Present. Teresa Nielsen.
Here.
And Chaz Jones.
Here. And first we have minutes from March 6th.
Line 21, it says motion approved 3-1, and there's no opposition.
Line, what's it, line 31?
21.
21.
Thank you.
Oh, 3-0.
Get that corrected. With that, we have a motion to approve.
So moved. I'll second.
Motion made by Councilor Andrade and seconded by Councilor Nielsen. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hands, guys.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. And next, we have a building permit, review of the building permit fees. And Chris, did you want to kick that off?
I could talk briefly, but that's mostly why Ron's here, and Ruth actually pulled this memo together for us. So,
okay.
I'll probably kick to Ruth and then let Ron address it briefly. You want to introduce Ron? And
Right. Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to apologize for the pages that have garbage. I was running a little close on time deadlines on Friday getting this out, and I did not realize that the copy machine threw up on the pages, for lack of a better word. So I've handed out some revised sheets to you, and I will make sure that the online version is fixed tomorrow.
Thank you.
I do apologize for that. Ron Dietrich is here tonight. He is our building official from Benton County. We subcontract with Benton County for our building official services. He serves as our building official when I have those kinds of questions. Ron is just as important as any department head in this city. So I'm going to let him talk about the proposed rate increase that has basically come from Benton County.
Correct. So brief history, I don't know how many were on the city council the last time we had a fee increase, which was 2 years ago in April. At that time, it had been almost 10 years since the previous fee increase, and there was comment of not waiting 10 years between increases. So in the past, so moving back to 2010, when we had the fee increase, it was a general overall increase of the electrical, the plumbing, the mechanical, and structural permits, and sort of revamping. It had been about 10 years previously since we had a fee increase. Moving forward in 2021 or 2020?
Yeah, April of 2021.
So at that time, we adjusted the fees based upon the inflationary index, and we held back on raising the minimum fee on the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing permits. So the net effect on the customer was quite minimal because we hadn't raised the minimum fee. Most of the mechanical permits, like for a wood stove or a new furnace, the price didn't change at all. And then I guess the other piece to touch on is the mechanical, plumbing, and mechanical fees do not adjust unless we raise them through a public process. The structural fees are adjusted yearly, and they're based on the valuation, which every February, the ICC updates the valuation tables. And so a building permit, like a structural permit, is based on the value of the job, and then the fee is a multiplier, and that's how the permit gets issued. Plumbing, mechanical are set fees, and so along with the electrical, unless we adjust them periodically with inflation, they'll sit there until the next round. And so that's what we've done here. Obviously, the last couple of years, inflation has been a lot higher, and it's impacted providing services. Mainly, the county had a wage increase that was rather substantial last year, and our fuel prices have been substantially increased, which are, for us, two biggest outliers as far as what we spend our resources on. The inspectors average about 120 miles a day, and it racks up the miles both on the vehicle for maintenance, but also the fuel cost. So the proposed fee increase is, again, just on the mechanical, plumbing, and electrical permits, and it's based on the CPI for the last 2 years, 2 months, which is right at or just over 12%. And so these would go into effect January 1st, which would make it 30 months since the last fee increase.
Got it.
And just as a reminder to help you out with the contract that we have with Benton County, on our fees, we turn, there is the fee plus there is a state 12% surcharge on every permit. So the state takes their 12%, that's segmented off. And then the fee, 70% goes to Benton County for the services they provide, and we retain 30% to cover our costs for our management of the program, and that includes part of my salary, Leilani's salary, and those are the two primary drivers. We've got some other smaller costs associated with, our allocation towards phones and things like that. So that is how those fees get split up. We only retain 30%, 70% of it goes to cover the costs of the plan review, the building inspections, Ron's time dealing with all of the myriad weird things that we deal with, yeah.
Thank you. Any questions for Ron?
I have one. In the background information on page 1 of 1, it says the city's agreement with Benton County for building program plan review and inspection services require the city to establish fees at a rate not lower than the fees charged by the county. So where do these increases, does that make it us more than the county or equal to the county?
No, that's part of the reason why this is not going to be effective until January 1. We have to go through a fee, and the county has to go through the fee increase process. We have to go through that process, and Adair Village.
No longer Adair Village,
No, okay.
because they
All
gave up their program.
But we have to coordinate. And this includes a notice to the Building Codes Division where we give a 45-day notice prior to our public hearing. We hold a public hearing, we have the public process, and then we have to submit the fees up to the state for them to upload into the system. That all takes some time. So Ron and I have had some extensive conversations, and he talked extensively with his leadership at the county, and we agreed that January 1 was the best way to go in order to implement these. And then we will be the same.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other communities in the region that contract with Benton County to provide the service?
No.
So,
Like, she made reference to City of Adair for a period from 2000 until 2016. They had their own program similar. In fact, the contract was identical. They chose, when we went to the state's inspection permitting program, they chose at that time to drop the program.
okay, so they just have their own in-house contractor, so they have their own in-house inspector? Or
They were contracting with us. They gave up their program. So it's sort of, the state oversees all the programs statewide. Then it goes down to the counties. So if a city gives up its program, it goes to the county gives up the program, it goes to the state.
That's it. If the city of Philomath did not have one, then Benton County would collect fees. They would take those fees and they would do whatever they do with them. The city wouldn't have any part of it. Okay,
Correct.
got it.
We wouldn't be able to take care of people here in the city. It's a huge benefit to our citizens and our contractors, and it provides us with a local control of coordination with our public works department, our planning department, the fire department. Now, when I'm dealing with a building permit, it's like Philomath is the central hub, and everything gets disseminated out, collected back in, so that we've got, one complete package to provide our contractors with.
Any questions, any additional questions for Ron?
So next steps for this is for the city council to hold a public hearing. And so basically, tonight, we wanted to make sure that all of you were comfortable with the information that was being provided, answering questions that you had. And if you are satisfied with that, then you will just recommend to move it to the city council for a public hearing and final fee review.
And certainly if you have other questions that come up, I'm readily available.
You can see I tried to give you the scope of the effect of the electrical, mechanical, and plumbing rates on a typical house. Because that's the most common question I hear is,
Sure.
well, what's this going to do to a house?
And then, so the expectation is that the county is going to make the same proposal,
Right.
or okay.
Yeah.
So then it will be the same. Got it.
And the public processes generally are pretty close together, but
yeah,
actually this is the first time we'll have a little more time to.
We wanted to make sure we did the public outreach, that we get the public hearing in the city newsletter, in the weekly email several times.
Got it.
So.
Are there any concerns about this? No? Okay. So we want a motion to forward it to the council? Or
We just got consensus, that's fine at this point. We're not making any decisions here other than to have a hearing, so.
Nope.
Okay.
We'll get that scheduled.
Thank you, appreciate it. Ron, we'd love for you to stay and join us for the rest of the conversations if you're interested.
I'm gonna have dinner.
There you go.
I just want to make sure that you did feel like you were invited.
Well, I appreciate that.
You like
And there's
to-
lots of really good places to eat in Philomath, so
There is.
there we go, Bill.
There you go.
He's been in most of them, inspecting them at one time or another.
Well, the food is good too, so
I know
there
just where to go.
there you go, I'm glad.
They're all good choices.
I'm gonna go dirt road.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
Well, thank you all. Have a great
And
evening.
we will
Nice
bring
meeting you.
him back, when we take this to the city council, we will bring Ron back to answer any questions
Okay.
for the full council.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
being
nice
here.
meeting you.
All right, take care.
Next on the agenda, we have the land use planning fees review.
And I can touch on this, Mayor.
Okay.
So the memo comes from our planner, Pat Deppa. He notes that last time we looked at these land use applications was in 2017. Again, our costs have gone up a little bit then, personnel costs have gone up. But most recently, with some changes that have been made to our code on notification of the different types of applications we receive, Those costs are going to go up as well. Specifically, we're looking at increasing the radius for mailings on type 4 to the larger applications. We're also looking at some additional signage for even a type 2 land use application. 2, 3s, and 4s will have the signage, which we again previously haven't been doing. So just add some costs, and then, I think a good review as well to look at what is the actual cost of that application. We don't want to, if you got an individual property owner and they want to do some type of land use, say they want to partition their property, we don't think it's fair that the rest of the citizens of Philomath have to pay for that homeowner to divide their property. That should be the cost of the owner. And the only way that we have to capture that cost is to charge an appropriate application fee and try to do that. So it's good timing. Every several years we should be taking a look at these and just make sure that the costs that we're charging for these application fees are in line with the actual cost of processing that application. Everything from notification to staff report to holding any public meetings that need to be held. There's a cost, a direct cost with each of those things. So we just try to capture the application fee. So the updated fees you're seeing got listed out there, and this would pass by way of resolution, which has been included. And again, we'll just include that at the next city council meeting if this body approves it. So any questions on the fees themselves or on our process?
Councilor Newsom?
On, I guess, the back page of Schedule A, there is an access permit. It says public street in parentheses. Is there a reason why it's going from 90 to 50 downward rather than even staying equal?
Yeah, I think we were looking at we're trying to standardize these a little bit. So if you look further down, like the home occupation permit went up $5 from 45 to 50. That level of work that's done for that review is equivalent to both of those.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're just trying to bring those into alignment.
Okay.
So that's a $50 review.
It's
whether
an
access
extremely
or there.
rare application.
So even lowering it allows us to cover our cost.
Yes.
Okay.
On a similar note, the master plan development is going down from 3465 to 2500. Seems like, do we not put a lot of effort in when there's a master plan development?
We've not. It's going before it's a type 3, so it's going in front of the planning commission. We basically said anytime you go in front of the planning commission, that minimum is 2,500. By the time you're doing the notifications, staff time for prep, and then getting in front of the body and holding the public meeting, the lowest level we went was the 2,500. We've actually not, since I've been here, we've not done any master plans that aren't already connected to another type of application. So
Yeah,
typically
they're always connected to another application.
Yeah, the only thing that really triggers it that I've seen is if it's a lot larger than 10 acres, then they're required to do the master plan overlay. Conceptually, you could come in and do a property owner could do a master plan with just a master plan. We want some housing here, we want some mixed use here, and over here we're going to have some more industrial use, and this is going to be the open park area. And you would just come to the planning commission to just get that reviewed. That would be the 2,500. But typically what we see is somebody comes in and says, I want to do this subdivision, and it's on a 15-acre piece of property, and so I have to do this master plan overlay in addition to my subdivision application. And so they're running them concurrent. Again, it's the same level of notification. We're essentially doing that work at the same time, but yet we were charging quite a bit more for just that overview. I think this brings us into more alignment. And if they were just doing that conceptual master plan overlay, that $2,500 will be covered by that cost.
My last question would be, on the administrative refund fee, there's an estimated actual cost. How do we,
Let me address that. Well, first of all, we have not previously had an administrative refund fee. So what happens is someone comes in and we start work on a file. We do mailings. Pat's working on the staff report. The application's going sideways and the person chooses to withdraw the application. We put cost into it. First of all, any check that we have to cut to refund fees is going to go through our accounts payable department. That's people's time, that's time and that's staff time. That's where the $50 comes in. And that's a pretty typical refund fee when you're talking about having to go back and refund somebody's money. And then there's the question of how much time has our planner put into it, how much has gone into mailings, posting out of public, by our public works department, of signage, all of that stuff. So that's why there's two components to that.
How onerous is it on the city to develop estimated actual costs?
It's not that difficult. I mean, we asked Leilani, how long did it take you to do the mailing? And, it took me half an hour to post everything on the website and do all of that. And we're very conservative.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not meant to be punitive, but again, we shouldn't be having citizens of Philomath pay for staff time on a property owner that changed their mind or for whatever reason through their application and we've already spent time on it. So we're just trying to capture that back, which we've not been doing.
We don't currently have anything we can charge.
Right.
So right now we're eating it.
And we have had to cancel. We've canceled up to like the day before a
We
public
had
hearing.
public hearings scheduled, and then they withdrew the subdivision. And meanwhile, a lot of work went into that, and we had no recourse but to give them back what they paid.
Councilor Jensen, any question?
Just a question about the variance listed. That was a pretty good increase as well. Is there a reason, and what does that involve, and the difference in the increase between an A and a B and a C as far as why the jump?
Yeah, and actually, I think we need to go back and fix that one. I think
The Class C goes before the planning commission. That's why it's 2,500.
Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
Class C is planning commission, Class
Class
B
A is an
administrative.
administrative decision. It's made by the building official. It's a straight up cut and dried, either it qualifies or doesn't.
But let me look at those numbers, though. I think Pat found some state statute that had some maximums on there and what a city could charge for the variances, because you don't want to, that was a lot of our conversation was, we don't want to discourage people to challenge a decision that they don't agree with.
Right.
At the same time, there is a staff level on there. So I did have Pat do some looking, and I believe he got back to me and said that there were some caps on there. So we can find that information, bring that before it goes to the
Thank you.
council, and I'll make note of that.
All right, thank you.
As there is,
But
there
there
are
are-
caps on appeals also, and our previous fee was a $250 deposit and then actual cost, whereas according to ORS, there are caps, so we're changing to conform to that.
I stand corrected. That is where the caps are. That was the $500 cap.
No.
The variances, there aren't the caps, sorry.
The Class B variance is a variance that includes neighborhood notification, and
It's very similar to the type 2.
it's very similar to a type 2 process, which now it will include, with the amendments that the council is going to consider on May 8th, will include posting of signage by Public Works, added cost. So,
Yeah, so
so Class A is a very simple one. Class B is it's still a building official decision, but we've got posting on the website, we've got posting on site on the property, we've got area notification.
there's a staff report,
And
there's
staff
a staff
report.
decision.
Class C is going to the planning commission.
Thank you. Councilor Riley, any questions?
Yes, actually. The changes in annexation and what it looks like is the subdivision also, from having a flat fee plus an acreage amount or a lot amount versus the standard fee. Is it just kind of averaged out to what it is?
No, it's really more a reflection on what does it cost to do it, and really, other than the mailings, there's really not a lot more staff time involved on a 5-acre annexation versus a 20-acre annexation. So you're going to pay a little bit more for notification, but the work is generally the same. And so again, we're just trying to, we're not trying to make money on these or have this be kind of a cash revenue source for us. It's really just about what is the true cost of running that application. And in that case, again, compared to the other applications that are in that $3,200 range, we felt that that was more than enough to cover that annexation fee, regardless of the.
And an annexation is one that's going to go before the city council. So it's at that type 4 level of 3,200 to account for public hearings before both the planning commission and city council, whereas a subdivision only has a hearing before the planning commission.
Any other questions?
And this zoning map change, is that because that cost is now enveloped in something else, or it's been deleted, but what was it?
Yeah, it's part of the comp plan and zoning map update. So we added on, instead of having a separate application for zoning or comprehensive plan and a different one for the zoning map, we've just combined those together as a type 4, $3,200.
Right.
So it's captured up above.
Yeah.
And so from the Finance and Admin Committee, you're just looking for us to get this feedback? Or do we need to make a motion to push it towards this council?
Yeah, if you feel like it's ready for council, again, I won't be making any changes or recommending to the variance. Those numbers are correct there. So yeah, either consensus or motion would be fine.
I just, one more, I wanted to know if there's been any comparison to other cities of just how comparable they are.
Yeah, glad you asked. we did look and compared to Corvallis. Try not to pick on Corvallis too much more than we have to, but we are substantially lower. I don't know if we've brought those with, but Pat looked at the city of Corvallis numbers, and we are a third to half or less of what they're charging out of next door. So
Sounds good.
we're still well below what Corvallis is at.
Okay.
And I believe we also looked at Benton County, and the same is true.
Yeah.
We really want to just capture our costs. These are not supposed to be a revenue stream of making big bucks.
And we have fewer people looking and reviewing, I mean, we don't have 4 layers of planners that are reviewing, and the supervisors review, and then the director's going to look at it. Pat looks at it, I review it, it gets approved. So I think we're a little more streamlined. We just have fewer layers that we're going through, and so we don't have to charge quite as much as well. And our code's this thick as opposed to this thick, so it's a little simpler to develop in Philomath.
Any concerns or? No. Okay. So we have consensus to move it towards council?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so we're looking at that probably coming at the first meeting in June on the agenda there. There is no public hearing requirement for those, but we want to be able to, set them out there and have them effective July 1.
So we'll do effective, we'll get in a newsletter and try to just generally let everybody know, but we don't have like a list of contractors, like the building permit, you can have your general contractors that are doing a lot of work in Philomath. This will be more of just a public announcement and public notification to everybody, and they've been updated.
Thank you.
Does anyone feel a strong need for more than that? Perfect.
Thank you.
So let's talk about facade improvement program.
Okay. So this would be a change in the program. I tried to be pretty detailed in the memo, so I'm happy to answer questions without going through it in a lot of detail. But I guess in summary, we have an existing downtown facade program. It's a loan, no interest, payable within 3 years. We've not used it a lot recently, in years past. We've known with the streetscape project coming, we were still trying to figure out what theme we were going to go with, what the look was going to be. It didn't seem like a great time to be promoting facade improvements until we're going to have that nailed down. Now that we do, and streetscapes program is underway, or the project's underway, we're looking at ways that we can help current building owners, especially in the downtown corridor, but really any businesses in Philomath, to get a little bit of a facelift. The 0% loans are nice, but when you're requiring the match and everything, I didn't feel like it was sufficient to really get businesses to jump on board and get some facade improvements done in a fairly quick process, and fairly quick timeline. So my recommendation to this body is to consider doing a grant program. The monies that we would be targeting for this primarily would be monies that are coming back to the city from some of the federal CDBG grant money that was given. So the city applied for a grant in order to help with home improvements, roofs, anything like energy efficient type stuff, window replacement, roofs, new insulation, that sort of bit. The city got the grant and essentially lent or gave the money out for these programs, placed liens on the property owners, and then as these properties sell, or essentially as they sell, then those liens get paid back to the city. There's no requirements from the federal government that we got these funds from and how those monies are then reutilized once they come back to us. So what we've been doing is putting it in the community development fund, and they've just been sitting there, and we've been using them to loan out for these business facade improvement grant or improvement loans and getting the money paid back. So really that money's just kind of sitting there, and it's been sitting there and been sitting there as we've not been promoting this program. So really of a couple choices, we could either just reinvigorate that 0% loan program, which again, with interest rates a little bit higher now. 3 years ago, 0% interest wasn't that big a deal because you can go out and get a loan yourself for 2% or 2.5%, and over 3 years, not a big deal, right? So it wasn't very attractive. Today's market may be a little bit different. Those loans are a little bit harder to come by, or a little bit higher interest rate. So we can either push that and see how successful it is with just the loan program. There's a little bit more tracking for us. We have to pay to get the lien recorded against the properties. There's a little more process. Some of the property owners, if they don't own the property outright, you go into second position behind the mortgage or behind the loan to secure the property, which can be a little more complicated. And then when we do get paid back that money, we've got to pay to remove the lien off the property. So there's just a little bit more administrative work to handle those. But the benefit is, and when that money comes back in, it's then they're available to loan out again to other businesses. My recommendation, what I proposed, is to switch it to a grant program. If you do the grant program, we'd still look for a one-to-one match. So if you're looking at a $20,000 improvement or $30,000 improvement, you'd have to put in at least half the amount of money. I do recommend that we still cap it at the $10,000 so that, again, it can go further, go to more property owners, more building owners. But at $10,000, they can essentially do a $20,000 project, the property owner putting in 10, the city putting in 10, and get the facade improvement done. I do see some benefit in the grant program, and that I think it will be much quicker. I think that we have businesses more excited for free money than money that they have to pay back over 3 years. I also see a little bit of competition for these grants, where you'll have businesses and property owners vying for these dollars and trying to come up with better projects than their neighbors, for example, so that they can compete and really put in. And so maybe instead of getting a $20,000 facade improvement where the city's putting in 10, you may get property owners and building owners are looking to do a $50,000 facade improvement where the city's putting in 10, right, in order to be a stronger application for these dollars. So I'm recommending, like, first year we would just do 3 of them, build the awareness, get some projects done, and then go out the next year and do another 5 or another 2, depending on where the funding is, and really get some competition going between the different building owners in town and spur the project. With the hopes that by the time the streetscape project's going, we've got some really nice looking new buildings in the downtown core specifically, to really keep that Timbertown theme up and going and spur that additional development. So all this is geared towards economic development, more, better commerce in the downtown corridor, making a kind of a fun place to go and to shop, and bring a little bit of pride back to downtown Philomath. So that's kind of the gist of it. There's specific recommendations on the language for the program itself. What I didn't take time to do is to actually go through an application, but the application will just essentially reflect everything in the downtown facade grant program that's been presented to you. So happy to get your feedback and have a good conversation about pros and cons and what else you might like to see in a program like this.
I have some questions about the original usage of the grant, the CDBG. I understand that now that the money has come back to the city that it can be used for whatever, but originally, so you said it was for home improvements. Was it mostly energy efficiency related things, or was it also like for just people in need in general? Like what other kinds of?
It was geared towards, I wasn't here then, but my understanding is it was geared towards low-income households. There was a criteria, there was an application process you had to go through, and there was a household income qualifier, and then that it was specific to, larger improvements. So windows, roofs, siding, insulation was a big one. But it wasn't like interior remodels or that sort of it. This was for kind of bigger projects that could be done.
Isn't there another organization that now taken over that realm of that type of?
Habitat for Humanity does a program like that now. They do a lot of rehabilitation of homes or remodeling.
I thought there was one more.
So they're big. I'm sure there's others.
Energy Trust of Oregon.
Community
Yes,
Services
yes, that's what I think.
Consortium was
Yes.
the original.
CSC, yeah.
Okay, that's what I remember.
And for all I know, they may be using some of these federal dollars to do that same program. It's just this was a big rollout. They hit a lot of the cities, and at the time, the federal government came in and said, "Hey, we've got these grants available for cities that want to do these loan programs," and so we were one of many cities that took those on.
Thank you. On that note, I personally don't, and I've mentioned this before at one of our prior budget committee meetings, I'm not comfortable using those funds that were towards helping homeowners in need to then help business owners. I understand that it sounds like a good program, but I think we should be prioritizing our people, and would rather see that come back to the original intent of those funds. And perhaps maybe include something like rental assistance or utility assistance or something to that effect.
And so these funds are the general fund essentially.
So under the Community Development Fund, it is outside of the, I have to look on that one. I think it is within the general fund envelope. I mean, it's not an enterprise fund or a business fund. It's not land-built equipment. So yeah, I think it's covered under the umbrella of the general fund.
But it is kept separate in terms of.
It's tracked separately.
It's tracked separately.
But they can be utilized for any purpose, yeah. And there's no earmark on what they have to be used for.
And how long have we had the existing facade improvement program? Using these funds as the backbone?
I think this original was
At least
10 years, it says.
2000.
It's like 2014, I think is the number that jumps in my head. 2013, no, more than that. 2004. 2004, I think is what it was.
I'm gonna say 2004.
Thank you. I love the idea of doing something to reinvigorate some life into the downtown, and the facade improvement program I think it sounds really great. I really like revolving loan programs where the money gets put back in over time, and so I don't like the idea of like just watching it drain. I think about the idea of providing a certain percentage back rather than just up to a certain dollar amount, or a certain dollar amount, like, oh, we'll give you $1,000 back if you upgrade your facades rather than here's $10,000. But I know the one-to-one match does get at that, so it's basically a 50% discount on a $20,000 project. I'm just throwing out some thoughts here that I have. I do wonder what the chamber, or what the folks at the chamber functions, what they think about the project or the idea. Yeah, and I just kind of wonder what their feedback might be.
And I think about the struggles of small businesses, and a lot of businesses have gone under during these past few years. And with the streetscape project and what that has done, maybe businesses have been, we hope not, but there's a chance that they have also been maybe slowed down during this construction process that will continue for the next little bit. I appreciate Jessica's mention of what these funds were additionally utilized for. But now that there are other organizations that are doing the same process for those individuals that have needs for roofing or windows or insulation, there are other avenues. I think it is appropriate that we consider maybe taking a part of this for the facade as we talk about it. And I kind of like the idea of the grant program. I think it gives them a chance to kind of maybe take our small businesses in Philomath to take a breather and still do something to be a part of this rejuvenation of our town without having to carry the weight or have another loan. I'm not big on loans personally, and I think businesses also have to be aware of how much loans they have in order to stay afloat as well. So I kind of like maybe a chance to maybe test the waters with a grant program. We're not committed long-term. I mean, I don't think we would be committed long-term. Perhaps we could just see how it went. And were you saying 3 initially, Chris?
In the memo, the recommendation was to do 3 this first round. Let me see where I kind of thought through this a little bit.
Bottom of the first page.
Bottom of the first page, thanks.
Yeah, 3 $10,000 grants the first
Yeah,
round.
to the first round, success of the first 3 projects will then be used to promote the program further, or, unsuccessfulness of the program would be like, that didn't work very well. But if it works well, then we'd, look to attract more applications, second round, potential third round, depending on where the funds would come from. As a side note, one of the survey that just went out on the other things to use the ARPA funds for, I did include this as one of those options in there as well, just because it is in the strategic plan to come up to kind of reinvigorate the facade improvement program. It doesn't say grant, doesn't say loan, it just says look at the facade improvement program. So I did include that as one of the survey options is, would you like to see the ARPA funds used towards a facade improvement program for the downtown businesses? And I keep saying downtown businesses. I think I put in there as part of the criteria. And my vision was we would have a certain amount of points if you were within that downtown core. You wouldn't completely eliminate buildings that were outside of that core. They just wouldn't score quite as high, but they could do other things to get higher scores, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't want the focus to be downtown, but it wouldn't be exclusive to the downtown area. But if you just rough math, we've got $110,000 in there now. If you did 10 of these over the next 2 to 3 years, that's 10 businesses in the downtown core that are going to get this nice facelift. I mean, you could name the number of businesses that have had a facelift in downtown in the last 10 years, and I could count them on one hand, right? So you're talking about a fairly substantial impact in a small amount of years that would really make a big difference in that downtown. And what I have seen is like when the Soft Star shoes went in, within a year, Beggs Tire was out there painting and cleaning up their front area and doing some stuff because it was like, wow, they look really good, and ours is kind of looking not so great. So those types of improvement projects spur neighboring properties to also spruce up. So even if they're not getting the money or applying for the money, you're still going to see an overall improvement in that downtown area, which is what we want. We're spending millions of dollars on the streetscape project, and we're talking about another $100,000, really committing $3,000 or $30,000, but overall maybe $100,000 additional to pump into that area to really get it looking nice. And it is about those small business owners may not be the ones that own the property, but it's those property owners are going to want to attract those good tenants. And the only way to do that is by making some improvements to the building, having it look a little bit nicer. perspective-wise, a good coat of paint on a larger building like that, you're going to spend that $7,000-$10,000 just on paint. One of the things I included in here, which isn't on the list, but it'll be in the application, is to include in their application, and sorry, I kind of skipped over a little bit, but the vision for this program, let me start at the beginning, would be that they reach out to the city, say they're interested, we kind of do a pre-application meeting. With that, I've already done some outreach to some local architects. And what I'm trying to negotiate is a flat fee that the city would pay for an architect to look at the existing building, look at a list of what I'm loosely calling Timbertown theme elements, things such as exposed timbers, corrugated steel, awnings, window coverings of sorts, the rock facade or brick mixed with facade. Our current building material standards for the downtown core for any commercial industrial is at least 3 building materials. So you don't just end up with a stucco wall, right? That you'd have some interest there, you'd have some different looks. So they'll have to comply with the 3 in order to qualify and to be chosen for the program. They'll have to upgrade their facade to at least the 3 building materials, and then they to choose certain elements within the Timbertown theme elements in order to qualify. So we're not just talking about paying for them to put paint on their building. We're really talking about incorporating the Timbertown theme into their building in order to be eligible for one of these grants. And so we would pay the flat fee out of our $10,000 that's going towards that building. The first, I don't know a number yet, $100, $200, $250 would be a flat fee that we would pay for their architect to do a rendering of their building with the improvements that they chose, right? So they say, oh, we're interested in this, we're interested in that. So they'll get a 30-minute consultation. They'll work with the architect, get an idea what they want. The architect will draw something up and they'll give that to the city as part of their application. So then we'll receive the application, the rendering of what the building is proposed to look like with the coloring scheme, the building materials, et cetera. And then we'll get their project budget and then actual estimates that will require them to get ahead of time. So when those come in and get reviewed, and we haven't selected the committee yet, it might be this committee, in fact, that would review those, we'll essentially be looking at, hopefully 5 or 6 applications, and we're going to narrow it down to 3, and it's going to be the 3 that have, we're getting the most bang for our buck, essentially, based on the criteria that we'll kind of develop in that application. So that's kind of the vision for these. It's really not just a $10,000 handout. It really is about working with building owners to really incorporate the Timbertown theme and really make a nice makeover to the buildings, not just slap on an extra coat of paint. But again, paint alone is going to be $7,000-$10,000 just for a paint job. So we are talking about a pretty substantial investment of these building owners in order to get the $10,000. It's not free money. There's going to be a private investment to leverage here.
And I was just thinking about potential pitfalls in a program like this. If Teresa's new business, then she decides that she's gonna hire her sister. She's gonna put on new blinds on the thing and they charge $10,000. Like, we're gonna be reviewing the application. We would vet it and be like, yeah, that's good value for what we're wanting to accomplish. It's not first 3 people that apply, get it.
Yeah, I envision we'll have an announcement date, we'll have an application date, and we'll have a review period, and that may be more than a quick 30-minute meeting, right? I mean, that may be a substantial review period. It's a lot of money, so, and it's free money, so they should be competing for it. So, we want to give plenty of time between when we announce the program and when applications are due, because we've got to have time for them to meet with the architect. The city will handle the architect under our contract, so we'll contract with the architect as a flat rate per rendering that they do, and that'll just be something we pay out. We'll make it clear in the language that's part of the $10,000 they're getting. They're just kind of getting that up front. If we get 30 applications in for that first 3, at some point we may cut it, right? We may have to look in that application process, maybe see we're going to limit it to the first 10 applications that we receive, put that money out. So we may have to look and see how that goes a little bit, but.
And just to make sure that the funds that we provide, is there going to be a time limit on that, when that would be utilized? We don't want them holding on to the money for 5 years while they decide whether they want. I mean, is there going to be something?
I think something like this, you're looking like 2 years. It'd have to be spent within 2 years.
Okay.
We want projects that are going to be ready to go.
Right. And is there any kind of guarantee that that money is used for what it is, intended? I mean, do we
Yeah.
just give them the 10,000, they do with,
It'd be, we'll pay direct invoices.
Okay,
Some of this will be, we'll have an agreement. If they're awarded, we'll have a whole agreement sheet, and we can reimburse or we'll pay direct to the contractor for services provided. But yeah, it won't be, here's $10,000, let us know when you're all done kind of thing. It'll be reimbursement basis or paid directly to the contractor.
and can we do that? Can we put a time limit that it has to be done within 2 years? Can we legally
Absolutely.
do that?
Yeah,
So
I think
that
2 years
we
is
see
generous.
that?
Yeah,
Okay.
and if you get partly into it and something happens, whatever, you can always ask for an extension. But I think we
Right.
have a pretty hard, the expectation is you have to be done within 2 years.
And is that realistic in your experience to say something like that?
Yeah, I think that's more than realistic. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, a year would maybe be pushing it because you got, depending on when the timing and everything is. So a year would be maybe a little tight, but 2 years is definitely realistic to have it done.
Councilman Johnny, getting back to the point that you were making, do you think that you would prefer to just end the facade improvement program completely and then think about other ways to,
fund it.
and how much, if we do a facade improvement on a structure, like a large structure, how much does the value of it actually go up? Or that's not going to change? I mean, would taxes go up on these businesses because they just did an improvement?
I don't think you're going to, well, it depends on how substantial, but typically for facade improvement, no, you're not going to see that in the taxes. Where you're going to see it is going to be, I don't think you're going to get dollar for dollar back. I mean, what you're going to see is more vibrant downtown.
Yeah.
You're going to see better businesses going into buildings. By better, I mean ones that are going to attract people to the downtown, that are going to have more commerce. They're going to invite more customers into the area. Even though our vacancy is fairly low in the downtown area, I've often argued it's way underutilized. We have several kind of mom and pop shop type things where they're open 2 days a week, 4 days a week, scattered hours throughout the week that they're open. And, it's not that they're not good businesses, but they're not necessarily good for the downtown core where you're trying to encourage people to go and shop and eat and dine and walk around and have things to look at and shop, right? So consumers are driven to places that look nice, that look like somebody cares. And if you're going into a grungy building that looks like it was built in the 50s and hasn't been updated or painted in the last 30 years, that's going to attract a certain kind of tenant, and that's going to attract a certain kind of customer. And so I do think that's just about having a little bit of more pride in the buildings and do that. And I do think we have business owners and property owners in the downtown that do care about their buildings and would like to do the improvements, but they just need that extra little bit of incentive to do it. It's one thing to go down to the bank and borrow $30,000 knowing that you got to pay that back over 5 years or 10 years, which means now you've got to generate enough revenue to pay that up. Well, if you've got the same tenants and the same everything to do that project, that's a bit, it's a bit of a risk there. But if you can get a grant to help leverage some of that, then I think it maybe will help some of the business owners, property owners get over that lump and make some plans for building improvements. So I guess the other last thing I put is right now the pitch is to use that community development fund for this. I mentioned that we've got it out on the survey to use ARPA funds for this as well. We could just as easily put $30,000 in ARPA funds to fund the first 3 of these and not do anything with those community development funds. We could look a little bit closer like transit lodging tax dollars in the future and see if, it's a 70-30 split, but 30% of that may be a revenue source for this type of work in the future as well. We only have so many buildings in town, so this isn't like a project that's going to go on for 100 years. But I think there's other revenue sources that we can identify. This is kind of the first fund, again, and that's just money because it's sitting there. We don't have a program for doing anything else with it other than what we've been doing, which is the facade improvements. So I'm not opposed to looking for other funding sources in addition to these funds, but I don't really have another use for these funds, nor have we for several years now.
Well, I really like the idea of, it's been a priority to try to revitalize more of our downtown corridor. I think I like the idea that the council or the committee, can make a recommendation on selecting certain businesses based on the proposal. But it'd be much more effective if this was like in a certain area rather than spread out across town. That may not actually achieve the goal for what I would prefer to see. I think that Councilor Andrade brings up good points about kind of the original uses of it, but I also think that I hear it all the time that people want to see Philomath be a really attractive place to be and to do business. So I think there's a huge demand for that. People really want that in their community. So I would, that make people proud of their community.
On the second bullet point, I provided preference will be given to buildings located between 10th Street and 16th Street within 1 block north and south of the highway. So that'd be the preference. Again, we'd put together as part of the application process, before we put the application out, we'd come up with a scoring matrix, and that would probably be included in the application so applicants can see what they're going to get the most points for, and everything from location, amount of match provided, number of Timbertown elements, and then we'd have something squishy in there like most effective use, or more, something that has some meaning to it, but also would give a little bit of flexibility, I guess, to the committee or the selection committee on picking one property over another if it was really, really tight, right? So if dollar for dollar, if it was the same project, they're within a block of each other, how do you pick between two? We'd have to tip the hat somewhere or another if that were to happen, but that's a problem I look forward to having, honestly, is having very competitive applications that would come in.
If we do forward this to council to consider, I think it'd be good to have the entire council weigh in on it. I really would like to make sure that we invite Chamber, some of our local businesses to come and just share their thoughts on it, if possible.
You want to just reach out to the director, to Lisa?
I think that would be good. And then maybe she can just mention it during one of their meetings so that at least the business owners are aware of it.
Okay. Time frame wise, there's no rush on this. I did, if you saw in the budget, I did allocate the I think it was the full $100,000 or $110,000 to get spent this year. In case this were to go forward, again, doesn't mean it has to happen, but if it's not in the budget, it can't happen. So the money, at least at this point, is allocated in the budget to get spent. But again, it doesn't have to be that funding source. We want to identify something else. But regardless, we've got some time. If this, this is first blush, right? I really wanted to get your initial input on a grant program versus loan program, identifying this as the funding source, kind of originally I'm looking at. But you kind of mentioned you like partial forgiveness, which we could look at. I think you get the same result with the match, right? You could do a 1-to-2 match if you really want to try to leverage the funds, try to get a $20,000 investment private for a $10,000 public. So we could mess with the ratios, but I think you're getting to the same thing as if you do a forgivable. The only real benefit with a forgivable, where I've seen them more effective, is say you do the $10,000 and then a year later you say forgive 2,000 of it, and then the second year you could forgive another 2,000, and then by the third year, if the business is still there, still operating, then you forgive the 6,000. And so you kind of get that same world. So you'd still have 4,000 due, but you've forgiven after 3 years, you've forgiven 2,000 each year and bring it down. The hard part is you're administering on that, and at the end of the day, even if they can't go, you still have a building in town that's got a facade. So the city really hasn't lost anything. If that business owner goes out of business and somebody new buys it, we still have a building with the new facade that we paid for. So we're really not out anything if they're done, typically those types of things are done more if it's a specific benefit to that specific business, not necessarily building improvement, but like a business loan. For example, you might see that forgiven more if they're there for a longer extended amount of time, or equipment or something like that. But when you're putting money towards a building improvement, that building's not necessarily going to go anywhere. I think just the one-to-one match is going to achieve that same thing.
Other communities in the area that have done it, and
yeah, there's a whole list. I mean, facade programs aren't unique to Philomath. There's a wide range of how they structure them. It really just depends. They're most often paid for from like urban renewal agencies will have a facade program. That's pretty common. If you're a participant in the Main Street program that the state has, it's actually national, but at the state level, there's a state Main Street USA program. They've got, programs that you can copy essentially to do facade improvements through those programs as well. We don't currently participate in Main Street, and our urban renewal dollars currently are all going towards streetscape. So if streetscape comes in under budget and we've got some extra money in urban renewal, this might be a good place that we could utilize those funds as well. But you're talking 3 years before we know where we're going to be on that. So 2.5 years for sure. So yeah, my goal in this was, it's in the strategic plan to update it. And it was sometime between now and when the streetscape project is done, could we have some of these in queue and really ready to go to kind of help kick off the completion of the streetscape. So those are the funds that are available. As a building owner, a business owner downtown, I'd be excited to apply for these types of things, whether I'm a new business coming in and buying an existing building, or I'm an existing building owner looking for new tenants or looking to improve what my tenants are paying for. I think that these are going to be very competitive going after them, which means we're going to get a lot of bang for our buck here for public investment. You're going to see a lot of private investment to help revitalize that downtown area. So I like the way it's structured, but my only pushback would be on myself would be, let's roll out the loan program first and let's see if it goes anywhere. Do a 3-year or do a 5-year zero interest loan and see if we get 3 or 4 or 5 takers on that program, and we know that money's coming back. Yeah, there's some administration, there's some liens, everything else, but if you're talking about getting $10,000 back as opposed to having it go out and never see it again, I wouldn't be opposed to trying that either. I just don't think it's quite as attractive, obviously, as free money, right? At the $10,000 that you're going to get as matching.
Especially considering all the streetscapes project and the motivation we want, whether we want to offer them to really get on board and to go forward in beautification of our city.
I might just email the OMA listserv or ask how effective any of these, just a program that is a loan program, see if anyone's been using one, if it's been very effective or not.
Mm-hmm.
Just find out. I mean, if granting is what it takes to get it done, then I think that sounds great. But if people are willing to do it at little to no cost to the city, that would be even better. But, and then the other thing I would hesitate is, if someone's building a new building, all of a sudden we're going to give them $10,000 to put siding on it versus what's something they're already planning on doing.
Yeah, I think we could make this specific to remodels, existing buildings, as opposed to new buildings coming in. Yeah. So, well, why don't I do this? Again, we're not in a huge deal here. My only pressure is the strategic plan says this is on the deal for this year, but it's sort of that. I'm really not that. I don't care too much about it. This takes an extra month or 2 months. So why don't I check with OMA, Oregon Mayor Association. I'll look on those CMA listserv. I'll reach out to some city managers that have programs that they're proud of. And then why don't I start developing an application and some application criteria, maybe give a first stab at a matrix. And we just bring that back to this group, and let's just have another discussion about it a little bit. The survey will be done by then. Maybe everybody in the community will say, yeah, let's do this. I think most people won't understand enough of what it is to truly get behind it, but maybe we can do some more brainstorm about other funding sources and things. I understand the hesitation on using the funds for those. It's just we don't have a program for helping with homes and roofs and all that. And it'd be really a whole nother program that we just don't have even anywhere near set up yet. So I do think it's a good use of the funds. It's what we've been using the funds for all these years. We just haven't done a lot of them recently. But I think I noted here the dirt road, when Marcia Gilson owned it and it was the wine vault. That original paint job that she did on that was with these funds. So that was a 3-year payback, and she used the
quilt shop also. The
the quilt shop used it
program
next door.
for
Yeah, so-
awnings, the pretty striped awnings that they put up. The building that furniture restoration is in, use the program funds.
Yeah.
There have been a few over the years.
Did McGee's building Hill City Hall, did they ever use this?
They may have, I can't remember that one for sure.
It does make a difference. Even the loan program is going to make a difference having it available. It just, with low interest rates, it's not been attractive.
Would it be more beneficial to the committee to bring this back without the red line, just in
I think so at this point.
proposed language, so that you're not trying to read between the red lines?
Yes.
Okay.
We have to bring it back then to the meeting and have a conversation. Thank you. Anything else?
That's it on that. I appreciate the feedback. I'll do some more work and at least want to take a first stab at it. So that's good feedback.
Well, if there's anything else on the agenda?
Well, thank you. Originally, those building permit fees, we were considering that those would be effective July 1, and that was why I wanted to get this committee meeting together so quickly. And then Ron and I talked about we needed a better public outreach process and everything, so we agreed to push it back. So, but I do appreciate everybody coming together for a meeting, because the land use fees, I think, is an important thing to see those be effective to July 1.
Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn